und herzlich willkommen bei Multilingual Stories. Mein Name ist Dr. Bettina Gruber und ich bin die Linguistin. Ich unterstütze voller Begeisterung mehrsprachige Familien mit Herz und Verstand auf ihrem individuellen Weg, damit ihre Kinder alle Familiensprachen erfolgreich und mit Leichtigkeit lernen können. In meinem Podcast bekommst du sehr persönliche Geschichten von Mehrsprachigkeit aus der ganzen Welt zu hören. Lehn dich zurück und lass dich inspirieren. Hello and welcome to today's episode of Multilingual Stories. I feel like every time I introduce a guest, I feel like this is a very special guest, but it's really true today because this woman changed my life considerably years ago already. She was my first coach, really. She works in a private practice as a coach, and she is also an in-house coach to a quite famous coach. So here we go. Ania, welcome to Multilingual Stories. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to be here.
That's amazing. We haven't talked in a really long time. So all our listeners get to listen in on a conversation between, I like to say in the end, we also became friends. I was at your wedding in Poland.
Yes, exactly. But I think we've seen each other once since then.
Yes, probably something like that, if even. So you all get to listen in on a conversation between friends. And I'm sure that Ania is going to tell me stuff about her life that I haven't heard before. So I'm really curious. Ania, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So people who know the name Ania know that it's, actually, it's quite a common name in Europe overall, but not in the UK where I was born and raised. So I was the only Ania I knew. My heritage is Polish. Both of my parents come from Poland, and Polish was my first language at home. My parents, you could say, escaped communist Poland to, seek freedom in the UK. And then I was raised in London on the sort of periphery of a Polish community, because there are quite large Polish communities in London, really well-established ones. And the irony is that they're all connected to churches because Poland is a very Catholic country. And so my parents, and my mum in particular, did her very best to try and help me to be part of that community, and my brother. And we went to Polish school on Saturday. I think it was from 9 a.m. till 1 o'clock. And
wow.
Yeah. And
that's considerable.
Yeah, it was quite intense. And the subjects covered were language, but also we did Polish history and Polish literature, geography, and then that led to me doing my what we call GCSEs in the UK. I don't even know whether those qualifications still exist. And then it could lead to A level.
Wow.
So the irony was that we were not quite in this community because both of my parents were atheists. Mm-hmm. So even though she tried to take me to church, there was an incongruency there. But it was a big part of our life, and all of my mum's friends were Polish, so I was very much in a Polish bubble, which was close to a bigger Polish bubble, going to English schools. The first few schools that I went to were Catholic schools on account of the perception that they had better education, not at all on religious grounds, but because we were Polish, it was sort of easy to justify. And and I was the only Polish person then in the schools. I didn't know any other Polish people. It was before the opening of the European Union. So, and like I said, we weren't quite in the right area of London. We were on the periphery of it. So, so I did always feel like I was a bit different to everybody else. Yeah.
Yeah. So you went to Polish Saturday school for how long? Like, at which age did you stop?
I think I started around 7, which is standard age in Poland to go to school. And then I was a little bit of a misfit. So I didn't really fully enjoy going to school, but for some reason to the Polish school, but I always had this mentality of, if I don't do this, I'll regret it later. Like, I don't know how I had that already at a young age. Like, I need to do this because I need to be able to speak Polish. I need to be able to understand a bit of the culture and stuff. I did swap schools because there are several Polish schools in London. I swapped schools at one point. I did the GCSE, which is the exam that you do when you're 16 in England. And then I started doing the A-level, which was when the really sort of intense middle-age literature was happening. But I was only, I think, 13 or 14 at the time. So I was just too young to really understand it. And then I think in the end, I was in the class for 3 years, and then I gave up because I had my own like English school stuff to deal with.
So I do know a little bit about you. Yeah. So the background of the question is, what about your Polish today?
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So I left home when I was 18, like all of my peers did. We all went off to university. I went to study in the north of the UK. And so my Polish was basically near native at that point when I went to university. If I was in Poland, nobody would know that I wasn't Polish. And then I went to university, and then the only Polish I had was actually with my mum over the phone when I remembered to call her every 2 weeks.
Okay.
And my mum and I are pretty close, but I was just busy in my own life. And so
you were 18, I mean.
Exactly. I was, had stuff to do.
Yeah.
And then I was also learning other languages. So I think one of the consequences of me being raised bilingual was that I always had an affinity for other languages. And at school, in particular, I studied French and then Spanish, and I was always perceived to be very good at it. And so I ended up going to study Hispanic studies at university, and that involved me studying Spanish at a really deep level, but also Portuguese.
I didn't know that about you.
Yeah, exactly. And so I became very focused on those languages as well. And then I did a year abroad, and literally it got to the point where my brain was so full of Spanish that I couldn't think in Polish anymore, which was a very strange experience. But I've had that several times when I've been really intensely immersed in a language and struggling actually to switch into a different language. So actually then my Polish got worse, and I started to lose vocabulary, but also not expand vocabulary. So one of the things that I've noticed is that I can easily talk about, and this is me today, but this has sort of been cumulative over time, that I can speak on a number of subjects in English very fluently as an adult, because I read in English and I have discussions in English. And then what has happened is that I haven't really expanded that vocabulary in Polish. And so certain subjects are not very accessible, or inaccessible actually for me right now. So I do travel to Poland quite often. My mum is still based out there. But if I have a conversation about anything outside of cooking and children and the home, it becomes a challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, that's completely normal. What you're experiencing, that's not unique in the sense that, you have different languages that you focused on and your life changed and you moved somewhere else. You live in the Netherlands now. We haven't mentioned that yet. So you've moved in the meantime. And when your life changes, your languages change with your life, basically. If you were to move to Poland tomorrow, within 3 months, you'd be, up on top again.
Yeah, well, maybe not 3 months. It's a really difficult language, but
no, but you have everything that you need to have. You have the basics, and everything else, as you said, that's vocabulary, and everything else will come back. And we all expand our vocabularies our entire lives. We do in every language, basically. A year ago, nobody, would be talking about vaccines the way we're talking about vaccines these days,
exactly.
So it does always expand. Yeah. So you have 2 children.
Yes.
Do they know any Polish?
So, interesting story. So when my son was born, it was natural for me to first speak to him in Polish.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That's so nice.
That is the language, that's the kind of, like in the Netherlands, they have this word, gezellig, like cozy, kind of, was like the most cute, cozy language. But that changed really quickly as I sort of started feeling like I couldn't quite get the words out. And I did switch to English. So do they speak Polish was the question. At a certain point, I ended up hiring a Polish childminder. And she spoke to my daughter in Polish. Yes. And my daughter has some understanding of Polish now as a consequence of that. Well, I speak obviously to the childminder, who happens to be a friend of mine as well, in Polish, and the childminder actually has a background. She studied. Now I don't know what the word for this is in English. Pedagogy. What's the word? Is that the word in English?
Yeah, it is.
I've never heard it in other languages. And so she came in quite sort of with an understanding about language accumulation, and so my daughter actually does understand a bit and knows a few words. My son knows a few words, but he understands a lot less. We did spend actually the summer before COVID. So what's that? 2 years ago?
2 years ago already. Yes, it's crazy.
Yeah, we spent 6 weeks in Poland, and we put the kids into a Polish Montessori school. It was just activities. It wasn't really school. And they were there for, I think, 2 or 3 weeks. And that also had a little bit of an impact on their language acquisition, because they hear it from me when I speak to my mum. I've got some friends here in the Netherlands who are Polish. They hear me speak it all the time. So it's familiar to them. It's just that they don't speak it. They don't speak it, no.
So your mom must be fluent in English too. So she lived a very long time. She lived in the UK.
She lived around 40 years in the UK before she re-immigrated back to Poland. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did the language used between the two of you ever change over the course of time? Did you always only speak Polish with each other?
So the way that it works, because of the boundaries of my vocabulary, is that we always start in Polish. We talk in Polish until I hit I don't know how to say this in Polish, and I want to have this conversation. So then I switch to English, and then we switch back as soon as.
And what does she do?
She continues to speak to me in Polish, and sometimes, she's bless her, she's so sweet, my mum. But she you've met her, haven't you?
Yeah.
She struggles to translate. So when when I'm speaking in English, she go, yeah, I understand. No, so how do you say that in Polish? She go, I don't know.
That's really funny. So, how do you feel about your children not fully understanding and or speaking Polish?
So it's interesting. It's a really interesting question because it's a little bit sad for me, honestly, because I do feel a great part of my soul is Polish and my genetics is fully Polish. Genetics are correct grammar, but actually, it's also my doing. I think I made a choice because we live in the Netherlands that and my language of communication with my husband is English as well, that it would be easier for me to stick to Polish. And in my head, I found it difficult to be able to switch
stick to English.
The two. Yeah, if I was to speak to them in English, which is obviously a world language, a prevalent world language, if I was to speak to them in English, I found it really difficult to switch into Polish as well. Although when my daughter was with my daughter, when she was singing songs in Polish from the childminder, then I would join in and then I would try and engage with her a little bit in Polish. But again, she's not used to it. It's so it's never really taken off. And I also feel like my life is so full. It hasn't been a focus point, and I feel like they're already bilingual.
They speak Dutch, obviously.
Yeah,
so exactly. Your husband's Dutch. We should mention that. Yeah,
exactly. And we will definitely continue visiting Poland, and when the borders open and it becomes easier again. And I'm open to what may happen in the future. We have discussed potentially moving to Poland one day. My husband actually tried to learn Polish.
Wow, that is amazing. And that's such an important example for the children.
Yeah.
That is such a great role model for the children because it gives the language a completely different value. When you see, it's not just your mom, but your dad's interested in it too. That's amazing.
And they're very, very close to my mom. And they are aware. I mean, she speaks excellent English and she always speaks to them in English, but to
them in English?
I know. I mean, I
need to have a word.
She has the same thing as me, like, because she just wants to be able to communicate. Like, she doesn't want to kind of the lack of common language to get in the way of the connection. And I think that's always been my biggest challenge as well. Even with learning Dutch, which is also another interesting subject, because I have at one point been fluent in 6 languages, and Dutch would be my 7th. And I came here thinking, I'm going to learn this within a year. But because I want to communicate, and because literally everybody here has at least a very basic level of English, I would always favor connection over the language. And especially at the beginning when I felt quite lonely here and I didn't know many people, for me it was more important to connect than to learn the language. And I feel actually quite embarrassed that I don't speak Dutch. I understand a lot of it, but I don't speak Dutch. But I always favor connection over language.
So there are 2 things I need to ask about now. Well, one I need to comment on and one I need to ask about. You said 6 languages. We've only heard about Polish, English, Spanish, and Portuguese.
And French. And Italian.
And French and Italian. Oh, because you did Romance studies and then you went for all of them.
Islamic studies. Well, so I qualified as a teacher after university, and and because of the nature of the language education in the UK, Spanish was always a minor language, so you had to be able to provide both French and Spanish together. And so in order to be able to teach Spanish, I had to be able to teach French. I did French A-level, which is the exam you take when you're 18 before university. And so I qualified. And I did a 6-week course in the south of France in Avignon. It was absolutely gorgeous. Get my language up, my French. And I was at that point speaking fluently, which I lost very quickly.
But that's amazing. That is amazing. And the other thing is, yes, connection above everything else. Yeah. I mean, that's also what I tell the parents I work with all the time. Connection comes first. But there's ways to have both. You can eat this cake and have it too.
Well, I am open to all of your suggestions.
We need to talk. We urgently need to talk, Ania. Because you mentioned something that's, anybody who follows my work knows this about me already, because I keep reiterating it all the time. Language is not just a means of communication. It's part of your identity and part of your culture. And you are very clear about that. And, to some people, I tell that and they're like, wow, I never thought about it like that. But you already put it like that. Like you already have this awareness that this Polish part of you, because actually you are Polish, it's such a big deal for you and it's such a big part of you. But somehow you're not passing that on to your children. But the crucial point is part of your children is Polish too.
Yeah, it's true. I always joke with them and I say that they're half Dutch and half English and half Polish.
Did I get the joke yet?
No.
But it's true. It is true. Yeah.
It is true. And so what I've done is I try to create kind of environments where they can be exposed to Polish, like with the childminder or spending so much time in Poland. Making friends with Polish families, and I always gravitate to them because somehow that feels like touches my soul on some level. We always have Polish cleaners. I know that's not the best example, but we had an amazing one once who was so sweet with them that like as soon as she would come in, the kids, I would not exist, and they would like go to her and she would be carrying them around while she was cleaning.
Cool.
She was amazing. Yeah.
So on a let's say weekly basis, how much Polish do they hear? Like how often do they see the childminder?
So it's 3 days a week.
Oh wow.
After school. So my daughter, she's 4. She's just started school this, I think, February when the schools reopened. And now she goes there after school unless there's some kind of play date or something else organized. Yeah, but she spent 3 whole days a week with her for about a year.
Then my suspicion is the following. Your children understand much more Polish than you think they do.
I think my daughter does, actually. But my son was only there after school for 2.5 hours or something like that. So he got a lot less of that.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But with her, I definitely feel like she does understand quite a bit. So I can say basic things to her in Polish, like put your coat on, come over here. Do you want to eat this? Do you like this? That kind of stuff she does understand. Yeah. But it's talking to you right now, I realize, oh yeah, she does understand that.
I'm sure she understands a lot more than you're aware of right now, consciously. Next question would be, how does she answer the childminder?
In English.
Oh, she does answer in English.
In English. Although there have been times where she has. So the thing with my daughter is that her first language is English. Then she was exposed to Polish and Dutch, but she didn't really understand either one of them. Then we sent her to, it's called Peuterspelzaal here, the A group in the which was like 2 mornings a week, and she was exposed to a lot more Dutch there. And she found it really intense. You could see that it really like intensely affected her. And then at the childminders, but that, you know, when she was there, it was all in Dutch. And when she goes to the childminder, what the childminder does is she speaks to her in both English and Polish. So she'll repeat, she'll say it first in Polish and then she repeats it in English.
Don't do that.
No, don't do that.
Do that.
Yeah, that's how she did it. And yeah, anyway, the thing is that she then started school and it was all Dutch, and her, like, she's right now, her brain, like, she's enjoying school and she comes home and she's like disintegrating. She's so tired and really sort of struggling with the tiredness, actually. So that's been a really interesting thing to observe about her, that it's actually really affecting her, like, and it's obviously it's the language and it's also the new structure and the new environment. And she's very bright and she picks up things really, really quickly. And she's exhausted.
Of course she is. And that's completely normal too, you know. And the thing is, whichever language system you set up, and you've done a lot for Polish already, like what you're doing, you know, that's great what you've been doing, like going to Poland and the Polish childminder and all that. That's amazing. The thing is, you need to have a system that's flexible enough that you can adjust it to whatever your needs are, and needs change. You know, children grow up, and the older they get, they have different needs, and you as a family have different needs. And then you need to be able to adjust that. So, you know, but you've been doing a great job already, and I'm sure that she understands more than you think. So if you were to test that and push that a little further, and if you were to tweak here and there, you would see progress rather quickly. But yes, you do have to keep in mind and pay attention to everything else that she's doing, and, you know, not sort of make it too much, because if she then starts to reject the language, that's exactly what you don't want. You want her to embrace it and to have fun with it and love it. So yeah, amazing. That's interesting. And so your husband speaks Dutch to them, I suppose.
He tries to speak Dutch to them.
He tries to speak Dutch?
Yeah. He also has problems switching between languages.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he more and more, and I remind him also, you know, speak to them in Dutch. And when we read books, he will read the books in Dutch and I'll read the books in English. I don't read the books in Dutch. That doesn't really make any sense. But but sometimes he does read them in English. But like we try to at least do that. Yeah. So
really, your children have a quite global upbringing.
Yeah.
Do you think that there is a benefit not just for them in the sense of the perspectives in the future, but do you see a connection to like the broader questions of our time? Do you see that they have a benefit going into the world with all these cultures and languages that goes beyond them just, you know, being able to take jobs that other people might not be able to get?
I definitely believe that. And I think, I'm just processing lots of things at the same time, right? Because when I was growing up, I always felt like I was way more open-minded than any of my peers, because I just experienced different things. And when I was young and I would visit Poland every single year, Poland was still in communism, you know, and I saw what it was like, where people were so close and had nothing, and there was nothing on the shelves, and the numbers on the shelves were like, 6-10 digits long, you know. And so I think I've always been more open-minded as a consequence of being brought up in two cultures. And I'm sure that for them, it will be the same. And what's nice for them here is that my friends, the families that we're closest to, are all also international families where they come from different countries, you know, France, England, Sri Lanka, India, Philippines, you know, so they have a much broader perspective than even the kids that they go to school with.
Yes. I think that the really amazing thing about this is, and you even use the word that I like to use, being more open-minded. I think that what your children or our children bring into the world is actually a contribution to world peace.
Yeah.
And that's a really big word and a really big concept. But, deep down, I'm so convinced that this is why we have an obligation, not just, I should do that, or it would be good for the kids. But no, we have an obligation to give our kids all the cultures that we have and to show them and to live with them all this enrichment and, the positive aspect of it.
Yeah.
That there's too much fear out there. There's too much fear of the unknown. And that's what it boils down to. For me, that's what it boils down to at the end of the day. Racism is fear of the unknown.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I have to mention my friend here. This is like going completely off topic, but totally on topic. I have a friend here who I admire so much. Her husband is Black, he's French, and she's as white as you can get. And they have mixed race children. And she was really bothered by the fact that the books that she was reading her kids were really just very monocultural. And so she set up a business with a Black friend of hers, which it's a book box where the books the books are all curated, and they have it's all about diversity and inclusion. So you have all sorts of different families represented in these books, and my kids absolutely love them. And they, we have really interesting discussions. Like there's a family with 2 dads or 2 moms, or there's a disabled kid, and they're different. Everyone's different colors, and it's just, such a beautiful concept and enriching. And for me, even, I feel like I find it really interesting, and I'm learning so much as well. It's just,
amazing.
I do stuff like that, just, inspire me so much. And
that is amazing. So I have to ask about that now, because I'm sure there are going to be people listening who will want to know about that. So that is in the Netherlands, and you swap physical books.
So what she does is she has a book subscription. So you buy into the subscription, and every month she provides a book and some extra resources with the book, and she curates all of the books. So she reads through hundreds of books, probably making sure that the story that they're excellently written. First of all, it's got to be good literature, right? Excellently written. That the way that it's presented, there's like a book about a little Black girl who wants to clean up the beaches in some tropical island where her family's from, because it's killing nature, so that it crosses different topics as well. So you subscribe to the books to her service, and you receive a book which is curated by the team there. It's called Books by Ania, Ani.
And it's in the Netherlands. She does it
in the Netherlands.
In the Netherlands.
The books are in English, and they're also in Dutch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. We have to link that in the show notes. We have to link Ania in the show notes.
She it's such an amazing thing they're doing, and they're doing it really to change the world for all of the right reasons.
That's amazing. I have to meet Annie, and we have to link her in the show notes.
Yeah. And so my friend is called Lindsay, and her friend that she's doing it with is called Anne. I think they link the names together.
Oh, okay, verstehe. All right. I have to meet them.
Yes.
I will link them in the show notes.
For sure. It's such a beautiful thing. Yeah.
That's amazing. Ania, that's, I think, the perfect conclusion to this episode. Thank you so much for sharing your story with me and with our listeners.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And we'll have to talk soon.
I'm sure we will. It will be good. I need to get a big book out and start.
Yes, you do. Thank you so much.